Ma'am, you can start.
Okay, sir. As you all know, we are part of Delhi Metropolitan Education. We are part of DME Media School. DME Media School is one of the top media schools in the country, which focuses on the growth of the faculty and the students through academic and co-curricular activities. Activities include Media Fest, Fritika, Film Festival, SIFI, monthly guest lecture series called BG Varghese series, and faculty development programs. This is the third edition of ICANN, Issues of Community, Agenda and News. We at DME Media School believe in encouraging students to function independently, closely guiding them and preparing them for tomorrow. Our media school is a part of Delhi Metropolitan Education, which is an A-grade educational institute affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University of New Delhi. DME is approved by Bar Council of India. The institute offers BBA, BA LLB, BBA LLB in addition to BA JMC. The institute is located in Sector 62 Noida. The students of DME are placed with highly reputed MNCs, media houses, agencies, and organizations. ICANN 3 is a 10-day digital event consisting of 14 technical sessions, 3 masterclasses, 3 plenary sessions, and 3 panel discussions, and 2 special sessions. ICANN 3 talks about community issues, their development, geopolitical issues, news, and the agenda setting. The objective of this academic deliberation is to study and analyze the pertinent issues and come out with scientific and rational findings. I would also like to mention about the books. We have published 6 books which have all the papers that were sent. We have the proceedings which will be inaugurated on 30th, in which all abstracts have been published. The links for the Amazon links for the books will be posted here in the chat box. You can go and buy. Um, Now I'll pass on to Ankur.
Thank you, ma'am.
Before
Can I start?
yeah.
Okay. Look what's going around, communicate with society and be a part of it. A very good morning to the Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, Co-Chair Dr. Mohammad Nuzrul Islam, Dr. Amrish Saxena, Professor Dean, DME Media School, Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, and our Faculty Coordinator, Ms. Deepika Dhawan, and all the participants present here with us. We are honored to have you all with us today on this enlightening event when DME Media School is hosting an international 10-day digital live conference that is Issue of Community, Agenda and News, ICANN 3, hashtag Conference for Change, hosted by the most promising institute of India, Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida, in collaboration with Deccan University, Melbourne, Australia, with knowledge partners Adamas University, Kolkata, KR Mangalam University, Gurugram, and Public Relations Society of India, PRSI, Delhi chapter, and media partners of Policy Times. DME Media School is popularly known in the field of media institutions and affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, approved by Bar Council of India. As we all are gathered here to continue the tradition which was started 2 years back, and today the third session of ICANN 3 will provide the reason behind the continuity of this session, with carrying the objective to highlight Indian cinema and alternate networks. We are overwhelmed to receive a huge response from all across the world. Now I would like to introduce our chairperson for the technical session, Mr. Uma Shankar Pandey. Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey is associate professor and head department of journalism and mass communication, Surendranath College of Women, University of Calcutta, Kolkata, India. since September 2002. He completed his graduation with honors in physics from University of Calcutta in 1996. He is a PhD survivor at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, University of Calcutta. He is the first Indian ambassador of the International Association of Media and Communication Research, IAMCR, the pre-eminent global association for media and communication research. Before joining academics, he was a senior journalist with English National Daily, The Asian Age, Kolkata. He has published over 25 papers in Refereed Journal and has authored 4 books. He was awarded the Best Media Educator of India Award by the Business World in November 2018. Sir, we are grateful to have your auspicious presence in the in the seminar. Our co-chair, Dr. Mohammad Nuzrul Islam. Dr. Mohammad Nuzrul Islam is the Associate Professor, Department of Mass Communication and Journalism, Belgium, Begum Rukia University, Rangpur, Bangladesh. He has a teaching experience of 7 years in mass communication and journalism. He completed his PhD in 2015 from the Institute of Bangladesh Studies, University of Rajshahi, Bangladesh. Topic: Effectiveness of electronic media for sustainable agriculture, development and investigation into TV program. He also served as head department of mass communication and journalism, Begum Rokeya University, from March 28 to Feb 2019. We are grateful to have your presence, sir.
Thank you.
Our teacher coordinator, Ms. Deepika Dhawan, who is an associate professor in DME Media School at Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida, affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, Delhi. She is a university topper in master degree from APJ Sadhya University in 2019. She qualified UGC NET GRF in 2019. She holds a PGCP in market research and data analytics from MICA. She has presented papers at international conference. Prior to this, she handled automobile brands in the advertising industry. Before this session starts, I would like Saxena and Bala ma'am to say a few words.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, and thank you, Dr. Nazrul Islam, to be with us in this session. This session is on a very valid topic, which is the global issues and the international politics. All the issues have been on different topics, but then beside these technical sessions, as has already been told to everybody, and I believe those who have been regular in our sessions since 21st of June, because today is the 8th day. And there are people, senior media educators and researchers and students who have not missed a single day for the last 8 days. So I owe to you to the success of this conference. And besides the technical sessions, let me tell you the other sessions, the plenary sessions in the master classes and the panel discussions that we have been having very fruitful, as very senior people agreed to join as a resource person, as experts. And this is going to continue. Tomorrow will be the last day. And tomorrow morning also there will be a very important panel discussion, which will be steered by Dr. Gauri Chakravarti, who is Associate Professor and Acting Head in MET School of Communication. So that will be the last session in all these special sessions. And also in all we had 11 special sessions. Special sessions, we include all master classes, plenary and all. And we also had the opportunity to have a session with a renowned international journalist, Betty Dam, 2 days back. She has been working in Iraq and Afghanistan, and she has worked a lot as far as the whole equation between the independent journalism and embedded journalism is concerned. And she talked about basically on the war mongering in the news industry, in the news media, because whatever we find in India, the war mongering done by all television channels in India, the same is the case in the West, particularly in the United States. So we have been having these kind of sessions, which can be, which can add value to whosoever is attending these sessions. And talking about Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, he has always been a great help. Whenever we ask him to extend the hand, he is always there. And as has already been told, he is the most bright faces in media, education, and research in India. So we are lucky that he is with us as chairing the session. Dr. Nazrul Islam has been associated with us for many months, but then there was some communication gaps because of this COVID-19 and all. But then he is again back, and he is also with us as the co-chair. And so I believe the kind of presenters who are there, the details will be provided by my colleague Deepika Dhawan. With that all, I believe that it should be a really wonderful session.
Bala ma'am, few words.
Good afternoon, good morning to all of you. This is 11th technical session on global issues and political communication. All sessions have covered diverse sub-themes and topics. This session will also be fruitful, I'm sure of this. Thank you, Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, to be with us. Thank you, Dr. Mohammad Nazrul Islam, to join with us from Bangladesh. Thank you to all of you.
Now I would request Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey to enlighten us with his views.
Thank you so much, the anchor. Thank you, Dean DME Ambrish ji, for inviting me. Thank you, Head DME Dr. Bala, for having me here.
Thank you.
Delighted to see the co-chair Mohammad Nazrul Islam. He's from our neighboring country here, and he and I speak the same language. So I'm not going to speak that language now. But thank you, Deepika, for such a wonderful coordinator. Everything has been wonderfully organized. Now, this is such an important topic that you've chosen, and it speaks so highly of the conference itself. I mean, it's not just about getting the people, but getting the right issues around. And it's important that we make sense of these things in our everyday communication, and also realize the context in which all these things are happening. Now, of course, all of us know the globalization context, and if we have to talk about Arjun Appadurai's conceptualization, there are 5 scapes he talks about. There's so much of people-to-people movement. Although because of the COVID-19 situation, that that scape is not so very is in the backseat for certain reasons. But there are other things, for which there are no boundaries at all. For example, there is something called the ideoscape. Once something, starts off in one corner of the planet, then, it's just a matter of moments before, it's there everywhere. So this ideas, the ideas of inclusiveness, the ideas of fighting against discrimination, this idea of, humanity and all that. These are the ideas, especially, in the context of Black Lives Matter that we are witnessing these days. So because of globalization, and somebody was talking about the information and communication technology in the early session, because of these ideas and these, techniques, and even the finances. I mean, once COVID was on, we would see, how global finances flowed into India, into certain companies, and so on and so forth. So we are an interdependent world. So when we talk of global issues, they have a global dimension, of course, but at the same time, there is a local dimension, or there is a local application of that particular issue. And that's very important, because something might mean something in one context, but in our context, it acquires, a very different connotation. And that's very important, how we identify with these issues, how we react to these issues, how we create those networks globally. And this is a very important area, because political communication is no longer just limited to a few dimensions, but it is multidimensional these days. I'm sure we realize the issues with algorithms and the problems that algorithms provide with us. And these are also global issues that we have to realize that, we regard, science as something which always speaks the truth. But let me tell you, that's one very important line that we have to understand is how we process that information. And that's where, the challenge lies. Most of the times as communicators, we are not behaving as scientists, but we are behaving as lawyers. I have a preconceived notion about something. I try and find out something that matches with my preconceived notion, and I take it, without asking questions of that. And that probably is a global problem that we are facing. That, how people react to information that is available to them. It's no longer just about, doing the fact checking and, putting out the information, but how people, take in that information. So we are not doing it like a scientist these days. We are not asking, rounded questions to all the information that is available. We are only trying to find out something that, matches our pre-existing beliefs and trying to, put it across in that particular dimension. So I think that, of course, being a lawyer is not a bad thing, but as communicators, it's very important for us to look at all these directions. And it's a fascinating panel. I was going through the panel last night, thanks to Dr. Dhawan, Professor Dhawan, who provided me the list yesterday. And it's a very conceptually rich panel. And I'm really happy. I'm looking forward to, the presentations from our dear colleagues. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I wouldn't say much because, if you start speaking, then probably I'll be eating into the presenter's time. So I'll stop here, and in between, whenever I can, make interventions, I'll definitely do that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. The theme of this technical session is global issues, political communication, elections, and public opinion. Any problematic situation or a disaster cannot be resolved by any one country acting alone. So it becomes a global issue for the world. It becomes easy when we communicate with each other to make out a solution for the well-being of any nation to come out from that situation and recover as soon as possible. It also allows the population to see the progress and responsibility of their choices and have a public opinion. Now I would like to inform that each of the presenter will be given maximum of 5 minutes for their presentation, and after that there will be a question and answer round for 5 minutes. So with the kind permission of our chairperson, I'd like to invite our first presenter.
Muskan, just a second. Dr. Nazrul Islam, please say a few words before I start.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you. This is a very good platform. I know Mr. Ambrish Saxena, sir. I communicated with him from long ago when he announced the ICANN 3, and this was I think it will be very good for us to if we have physically contact because of this ICANN 3. But there is a world problem, that means the corona, and for that reason we cannot meet with each other. But this is a good platform that because of the although the world is facing a huge crisis, but Mr. Ambrish Saxena can avail this program by this Zoom platform. I think this is my new experience in my academic life, and in the past I didn't take part in these types of any online conference. So the issues that were discussed in the previous sessions, I also participate in those issues, in those technical sessions. I saw that there are a number of academicians, they participated in that session, and I am very much delighted that you invite me here, and I wish a very success of this ICANN 3, and this is the very last moment, at the very last portion of this ICANN 3. I think already it has been succeed all of these issues, and today we can also have a good discussion also, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to call Dr. C.K. Singh, Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Communication, and Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit, Faculty of Commerce and Management, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaja University, Panvel, Navi Mumbai. Do we have?
Yeah.
you were there.
Hello, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. So your
Yeah.
paper is Role of Media in Showcasing Rising Voices Against Deprivation of Rudimentary Human Rights in Pakistan.
Yes. So, good morning, all. First, I will start with the PPT and then I will proceed. Just give me a second. I think it has to be enabled, the screen sharing.
It has been enabled, so you can please check.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Yeah, very good morning to all. It is indeed a privilege and I feel very pleasure because now for almost these days of lockdown, I'm continuously in association and I'm going with all the webinars what Amrish sir is keeping through different media, and it is really learning and introducing. This is Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit, HOD of CSSMU and from Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, and today I will be presenting a sort of a concept which is basically somehow related with Pakistan and Balochistan. So the title goes as said, role of media in showcasing rising voice against deprivation of rudimentary human rights in Pakistan. As we all are aware that there are different types of issues which the Pakistan is facing, and during this time, during these days, the Balochistan, which is very deprived of all the services. So on that, this research is actually, which is related to human rights in Pakistan. So proceeding further, what we see that Balochistan has been called a neglected province where a majority of population lacks amenities. Now, Balochistan means it's a land of Baloch. So it is basically one of the largest provinces of Pakistan, and the capital is Quetta, and it is having almost a population of 52%, which are Baloch people. Other than that, we have 6%, remaining 12% consist of Hindu, Muslim, Punjabi, Uzbekistan, and then people from Uzbekistan and Turks. So it is having around a GDP of 8.7, that is as per the data of 2019. Along with that, Pakistan is having overall, that is around approximately 5.8% GDP. So this is what we see, the current situation which is there in Balochistan, which is very much disturbing, and the role of media, which is a big role that plays globally, or when we talk about the media of Pakistan, journalism of Pakistan or Balochistan. Many of the newses are not showcased, they are not allowed to show. It had been really, because throughout this study, I learned a lot, and the scenario is really worst. One need to think, one has to be put his, will be having the fear in mind that, oh my God, I am lucky that I don't have to, like I am not a citizen of that particular place. Because the way the pains are given to the women, children, and the rate of traffic that is there, human trafficking, sex trafficking is really, one had to think about it. Curtailment of access of information and the protection of journalists is one of the biggest question that is found here, and journalists are not given good amount of the protection that is given. Many are killed, and news what they want, what the exact the government want, that sort of news is actually getting channelized. So IFM says that Pakistan's economic condition is really critical, and one needs to think about it in a very critical way. Media also try to expose at a lot of time that there are many inhuman activities which are getting some or the other way executed, or some or the other way are taking place in Balochistan, and the condition is very bad. Rather than developing the economic situations, or rather than thinking about how to give the citizens the best of what Pakistan government can give, or even the Balochistan, which is just next to Sindh, and these largest provinces are deprived of lot many services. In spite of that, we see that Pakistan is in tie-up with two biggest projects. One is called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that is CPEC. Now, when we talk about this, it is the collection of infrastructure projects that overall almost is having a budget of 62 billion, and the project work is divided into multiple phases, and it is one of the largest projects that Pakistan is having an association with China. And in this case also we see that project will be running till 2045. It's a very long project that will be going on, and along with that the lots of construction and infrastructural development are going on. Pakistan is donating, distributing or gifting lands to China for making it the next base, which is again a matter of concern for all of us. Now, current situations, when we see how different strategies are getting deployed, when we talk about China's strategies in order to show or overpower or over-dominate the world or the India, the troubles that the current situations we can see, here Pakistan is supporting China to the maximum level, and that is the reason why China has come in picture, that we will learn as we proceed ahead. And now the next project that is basically there is the Gwadar port. So when we talk about Gwadar port, it is the deepest seaport in the world, almost with an area of like we call 2,292 acre trade area, situated at Arabian Sea in Gwadar, Balochistan, province of Pakistan, which having a contract with Chinese Overseas Port Holiday Company. Now, when we see, rather than thinking of self-development, this sort of continuous associations are made with China, and Pakistan is slowly, gradually losing its all hope. Now, these are the literature reviews that has been seen throughout, out of which I will try to quote only two, looking into the time constraint. So in Pakistan, Hindu and Christian girls in Pakistan are kidnapped, they are raped, they are forced to have conversions. And in that case also we will reveal further that Chinese people are coming to Pakistan, they are marrying these girls, and then they are taking to China, and then these girls are put into different sorts of sex racketing and trafficking. There are young boys, young girls who are ill-treated, and irrespective of gender, it is the worst scenario that people are facing. There are a huge amount of information available through media today, and globally it is all exposed, whether it is the media of China or globally, that this sort of the troubles that the Chinese people are facing. The girls are generally all aging between 12 to 18, and this is the condition that we are seeing here. So many girls are married. Last year around 923 girls were married and then taken to China, and then they are put into different sorts of business. So this is the condition happening here, and almost 1,000 plus non-Muslim girls are forcibly converted into Islamic every year. So this is also another issue that we have to see here. Now we are moving ahead. We see that objectives of this study that basically talks about three objectives that we have taken here, that is to study role of social or digital media to uplift concerns of human rights at Balochistan and Pakistan, to showcase rising voices against deprivation of rudimentary human rights in Balochistan and Pakistan, to understand the poor fate of children and women and the sort of challenges that they are facing in order to have a survival in those places. There are multiple evidences, there are multiple sources which may be eye-opening for us. And when we start seeing the videos and when we listen to those girls, because throughout I have been listening to multiple videos and they all are mostly authentic. We cannot say they are just made by somebody. So it is very troublesome. And whenever we put online, just through any media, any digital media or any Google, we do that the type of the deprivation or human rights violation cases in Pakistan or Balochistan, it is the worst that we see. Now, research methodology, it is qualitative in nature. Secondary analysis, that is based on secondary sources we have tried to do.
Dr. Akshay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but 5 minutes are done.
1 minute.
Sorry,
1 minute. Yeah, 1 minute only, please. Yeah, now we have this is exploratory nature. Now, these are the critical issues that generally we could see, that is basically talking about the literary rate is as low as 41%, poverty rate is as low as 71%, then infants maternal mortality rate is as low as 99 per 1 lakh births, and also we could see that as per the researcher of Professor University of California described that it is an epidemic in social sphere. So domestic violence is 60.8%, and we are having almost 36% of children and 64% of adult in Balochistan are always under this sort of problem. So what the findings basically say, that there are different sorts of physical violation of human rights in terms of physical torture, there are detention in the jails, and then there are misconduct to them. torture, extrajudicial killing, which is one of the biggest problem that we could see here. And along with that, the military force or the management or the administration in Pakistan must look into this sort of things. And because many Indians, they have moved there, and lots of Sarabjit is one of the case. Then there had been, then Kulbhushan is another case, and there had been many cases as such. Now we could see, taking it ahead, we see that arbitrary detention, torture, death in custody, forced disappearance, and extrajudicial execution are rampant. The government of Pakistan fails to actually take care of the human rights, and it also must take care that this sort of death penalty or related issues are properly sorted. And that is what freedom of expression and human rights must be given proper, should be properly applied. And with that, we must, this is what we try to conclude. And the government must be thinking about the violations that they are making in terms of the rights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
The chair and the co-chair are requested to ask if they have any questions.
Can we have the questions at the end? I mean, so that the flow is not lost, or do you want? I mean, is it proper if we have the questions at the end of all the presentations?
It's up to you. You are the chairperson. You decide.
I think let all the presenters complete, and then we'll come back. That would be fair. What does the co-chair say?
Yes, Dr. Nazrul.
I think we can continue with the presentation,
Yeah, okay.
because we've already almost midway into the session, and only one presenter has presented. So let all present, and then according to the time we'll
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Our next presenter is Ms. Sukriti Arora. Her assistant professor, DME Media School. Her topic is Political Perceptions and Memes, a study on the role of internet memes in forming political opinions on the youth. Hello, Sukriti ma'am.
Hello, Deepika ma'am, and good morning to the chair and co-chair and all the other persons present. May I just share my screen? I hope the screen is visible to everyone.
Yes.
It's starting. Yeah, it started. It's
Yeah.
visible.
Just give me one moment. I need it on the slide mode. So the title of my presentation, as already has been mentioned, is Political Perceptions and Memes, a study on the role of internet memes in forming political opinions of the youth. I would like to start my presentation with this particular meme which I created. It is actually a representation of how I came to write this research paper. I come across a lot of memes throughout my social media all day. So I thought that it would be a good idea to actually study them and how they are impacting the political perceptions. Memes and politics have been having a relationship for quite some time now, and there have been many studies conducted, particularly such as in the US presidential elections of 2016, where memes went viral portraying Ted Cruz as the Zodiac killer, and that affected how voters voted against him. They had at least created doubts in the minds of people. And similarly, in Indian politics, in general elections 2009, there were a lot of meme wars happening between supporters of different political parties. And political campaigners have actually used paid bloggers, microbloggers, and commentators to hire, to generate content which would be in their favor or against their competing parties. So this brings me to my objective, that is, first of all, to analyze whether political meme content is preferred by young users or not, and to evaluate whether or not this content is impacting the perception of young voters towards political parties and politicians. Lastly, it is to test the applicability of third-person effect on young persons with respect to the influence of memes. The methodology I have used, it is a quantitative study using a survey. There are 51 respondents from Delhi NCR region aged between 18 to 29, and the sampling method was purposive. So the respondent numbers is very less. I know it's not sufficient, but this is what I could manage. I had to delete a lot of respondents because they did not fall into the age bracket. And my questionnaire was divided into two parts. First was a general questionnaire, and the second was focusing on personal engagement with the content. So the key findings of my research, first of all, were regarding the engagement of users, and 58% of them responded that they share and view memes often on social media, and 66% said that they also enjoy sharing political memes. So their engagement with political memes is quite high, and it is also being liked for a larger section of the my respondents. In the key findings, I had asked them if they believe political memes play a role in influencing the political opinions of young voters, and as many as 54% said yes, 10% only said no, and the rest were unsure about it. But in the next section of my questionnaire, when they were asked about whether their own political perceptions have been influenced by memes or not, then the statistics shifted, and 48% of them clearly said no, whereas 26% of them agreed that yes, their political perceptions have also been influenced by memes directly. And 31% of the respondents said that they started liking or disliking a political party as a direct result of memes they share and see online. And 26% started liking or disliking a political leader as a direct result of the memes they see. And it is noteworthy here, it is interesting that a few of those respondents who have agreed to changing their opinions based on memes have also said no, or maybe, or can't say to the previous question of whether their opinions have been affected or not. So I use multiple questions just to make sure that I get the right answers from them. And which brings me to the third person effect also. This is basically a hypothesis which suggests that people tend to believe that mass media messages have more impact on the generalized other group of others rather than on oneself. And to test this hypothesis, what I had done was to, as I already mentioned, I had divided my questionnaire into two sections. And it came out that 44% responded that yes, it affects other people, whereas 27% of this 44% said that there is no such impact on them. This is a very common phenomena for media, that we do not understand what kind of effect any mass media content is having on us, but we believe that others are affected by it. To conclude this research, I can say that political perceptions of at least 39% of the respondents have certainly been influenced by memes, and so that is close to 40%, and it is a significant number. Internet memes are, of course, offering a humorous context to political discourses through the digital space, while at least partly they are succeeding in influencing the political perceptions of young voters also. And several respondents have also suggested that memes are not only influencing opinions, but they are also reinforcing the existing ideologies and existing perceptions of the voters through rapid, sharing of these messages. And
sorry to interrupt. 5 minutes.
Yeah, I am just done. So I believe that this is an area which actually needs more focus, which actually needs to be looked into. It is not just humor that we are sharing. We are actually sharing political messages, which are actually the agenda of political parties also, and of media houses also. So thank you.
Thank you, Sukriti. So we'll move on to the next presentation, as you said. This is Mr. Amit Masi and Dr. Sanjay Mohan Jori, Amity University, Lucknow. Their topic is newspaper coverage of elections and public opinion in Lucknow, a case study of 2019 Lok Sabha election.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'm here. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, can I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay. Before I start, I really want to congratulate Professor Amrish and his team in DME for organizing this conference, and we were so looking forward for this. Okay, so myself, Mr. Amit Messi, research scholar and assistant professor with Amity School of Communication, Amity University, Lucknow. My topic is newspaper coverage of elections and public opinion in Lucknow, a case study of 2019 Lok Sabha elections. This particular paper and study is extracted from my PhD research topic, the data which I have collected for my research in PhD. Okay, so dealing with the introduction, public opinion, as we know, public opinion is very important as far as elections are concerned, because it is all about people who are going to cast their vote. What is public opinion? We know desire, wants, and views of the majority of the people, the collective opinion of the people in a society or a state on any particular issue. So it is very important these days to find out the exact public opinion. That's why a lot of organizations, research organizations, including political and non-political, are working towards this particular area. Exit polls, opinion polls, and polls conducted by different party are perfect example of this particular thing. We need to understand the Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha, we all know. I will not emphasize on this much. This is the lower house of the parliament. People are directly elected on the basis of adult suffrage. The one thing which I want to say, as I come from Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow, as UP contributes maximum seats towards Lok Sabha. That's why it becomes very important to conduct this study in Lucknow or maybe in Uttar Pradesh. Talking about Lucknow, Lucknow has always been a high profile seat as far as Lok Sabha is concerned. Post independence, a lot of relatives of Jawaharlal Nehru, former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, a lot of his relatives were elected as an MP from this seat. Example, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit and Sheila Kaul, who was sister-in-law of Jawaharlal Nehru. Then Hemwati Nandan, former CM, was also elected member of parliament in 1977. And since 1991, we know former Prime Minister and stalwart politician Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee has won 5 times from this particular seat from 1991 to 2009. For current Defense Minister, former CM of Uttar Pradesh, former Home Minister Rajnath Singh currently holds this particular seat. Newspaper coverage is very important because, as we know, media plays an important role in shaping people's opinion. That's why I have included this. My research objective, going a little fast, my research objectives are to find out public opinion in Lucknow in reference with Lok Sabha elections since 2019, to analyze the pattern of newspaper coverage of elections and agenda setting, to gauge the relationship between newspaper coverage of elections and public opinion. Coming to research methodology, this survey was conducted in the month of March, before elections happened or before votes were casted in Lucknow. Survey was conducted, questionnaire, close-ended questionnaire. Primary data was collected from Lucknow and urban, both urban and rural. Sample size 120. It was all cross-sectional data in terms of gender, religion, caste, financial status, education. All these were things. All these factors were considered while sampling. Random stratified and random sampling. I have divided Lucknow into different strata, different area. Then went there house to house and collected data. Second part of the study was content analysis, which was done on newspaper. I have chosen Hindi Daily because this is a majorly Hindi spoken region. Dainik Jagran because of circulation rate. It has the highest circulation in Lucknow. Time frame was 15 days. That was 16th of April to 30th of April 2019. And 6th of May was the day when votes were casted in Lucknow. I have considered column space and color picture space given to each political party. Last thing was approach on the basis of headlines, whether the approach was positive, negative, or neutral towards a particular party. These are the few literatures which I referred. As it will take time, so I'm not reading it. Coming directly to result discussion, we can clearly see that BJP was given 52% column space as compared to other parties which are 21, 27. Similarly, color picture space, if we talk about color picture space, 57% space was given to BJP. Only 1 minute. I will take 1 minute. Okay. So if we talk about approach, These were the different graphs put for the approach: positive, negative, and neutral on the basis of parties: BJP, Congress, and BSP and SP, as they are the regional parties. Survey was conducted again. 74% people are voting for BJP, which later converted into results also, the actual result. 70% people were preferring Narendra Modi in Lucknow as a PM. And like one thing which I want to mention here, more than 68% of people gave more than 7 score to Narendra Modi and his government, which was there before 2019. Coming directly to conclusion, it was clean and easy win for BJP in Lucknow. I said that it was converted into results also. Lucknow was chanting for Namo. Yes, there was a discrimination on newspaper coverage of elections. All parties were not given equal coverage, space, or positive approach. I can study the direct relationship between coverage of elections and public opinion. But I will also say there are other factors who also affect public opinion, which act as a limitation of the study. I just want to emphasize one more point. The study can be extended and can be replicated to reach to the conclusion in other constituencies. I have done the similar study with my student Saad Ali Khan, who is also presenting a paper in before Delhi Legislative Assembly elections. Thank you. The time was less and the content was more. So forgive me for that.
Thank you, Mr. Masi. Sir, our next presentation is by Mr. Mohammad Hussain Kadri and Mr. Amit Masi. They are going to present on a study to find out public opinion in Delhi with reference to Legislative Assembly. Okay, this. Amit sir, this is your next paper. You'll be presenting.
My student will be presenting this paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the topic is a study to find out public opinion in Delhi with reference to Legislative Assembly elections 2020.
A very good morning to all of you.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Kadri, before you begin, can you please turn your mobile around? Keep it horizontal, please.
So this is right.
Yes, perfectly fine. Thank you so much.
Myself, Mohammad Hussain Kadri, and I presented my paper with and my topic is a study to find out public opinion in Delhi with reference to Legislative Assembly election 2020. The objective of my paper is the objective of study to assess the public opinion in Delhi in reference to Legislative Assembly election 2020. And researchers also study what people think about the performance of existing government in Delhi. The methodology was a quantitative method and the sample size was 220 respondents. The target audience from the age of 18 to 60, basically who are eligible to vote. The study was conducted through primary data collected from Delhi in month of January, just week before the election. And I also prepared a questionnaire with 11 questions, which I was putting on my survey. Results and finding: the survey showed that 220 responses, 22% are not registered to vote. These respondents are excluded from sample. Delhi is a union territory. When we talk about gap between rich and poor, we classified in 4 groups. As we mentioned in my slide, researchers also tried to find out major consideration on which voter cast their vote in the elections. 45% voter considered CM face, 40% voter considered party, and 15% voter considered local candidate. When we talk about party, 56 respondents vote for AAP, 31% and 13% will be vote for BJP and Congress, which shows major opinion in Delhi, people of Delhi election. On assessing the CCM popularity, it was one-sided affair. 55% respondents want Arvind Kejriwal again, and 30% were going with Manoj Tiwari. BJP not announced the CM candidate. As the party president, we will take Manoj Tiwari as CM candidate, while 15% majority is Congress Ajay Magan. The survey is done for knowing public opinion regarding whom they will vote and help in forming the government. We find that AAP is forming the government with the help of opinion and research. The conclusion of my research paper is Delhi Legislative Election 2020 is all set to become a historic election in the history of Delhi politics. Transformation of government schools, CCTV cameras, mohalla clinic, or even for the traffic are the issues on which are influencing the public. and Arvind Kejriwal takes a brave and courageous step in reference of education and healthcare decision of his government and boost up. Absence of credible and able leader in other parties, there are so many factors help the AAP to come power again, like corruption charges on rule of Sheila Dikshit, inflammation, unemployment, poverty, traffic, and pollution, Nirbhaya case and Anna Hazare movement, and like that. Study has come out on the opinion of people in Delhi. People of Delhi vote for Kejriwal with an expectation of and hope study of development in Delhi. Delhi was not disappointed. Arvind Kejriwal Institute of the had its image which helped him to become 7th Chief Minister of Delhi. Thank you. Any queries?
Is that it, sir?
Yes, Mr. Kadri has finished.
Okay, let's move on to the next presentation. Thank you so much for presenting. Our next presentation is by Mr. Rahul Joshi. Ritvik sir, is he there? Since he had confirmed, but I can't see him.
No, he is not there.
Not there. Okay, we'll move on to the last one by Mr. Manav Seri, Rohini District Court. The topic is culture of violence and crime against women.
Mr. Manav Saini is also not to be seen here.
So, sir, I think these are the presentations for today, for this session. We can take up your question and answer round also.
That's all. So we can have questions now.
So there are some in the chat. Shall I read them out?
I think we should give preliminary. Yeah, you can read out. I think then we'll. So we can start off with the first presenter, the one on Pakistan human rights, and then I think we had Sukriti, then we had Amit, and then finally we had Mr. Kadri. These were the 4 presentations, I guess. So I think you can give them another round of maybe 1 or 2 minutes if they have something to add to their initial presentations. Okay. Can you hear? Am I audible? Yes.
Yeah, this is perfectly fine.
I think you can give another round of 1 or 2 minutes to all the presenters, and then we will, come back with our questions and our observations.
Okay, sir. I would request Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit. To add to his presentation. Ritvik sir, is he there?
Yes, he is there.
Achha.
Dr. Pushpendu. Can you please start your camera, Dr. Pushpendu? Maybe he's busy with something, so maybe you can.
We'll move on to. Shall we move on to the next?
Sukriti or Amit, or
Sukriti Arora. Sukriti, ma'am. Ma'am, if you want to add something to your presentation.
Yes, I would just like to, draw the attention of everybody towards, I skipped this because of the time limitation earlier, that the meme, the word meme actually comes from the Greek term mimema, which means an imitated thing. So it was, the word meme was coined by the British evolutionary biologist, Sir Richard Dawkins. And according to him, meme is a self-replicating unit of transmission for cultural evolution. So just like we have genes which are responsible for biological evolution, according to Richard Dawkins, cultural evolution ke liye memes are responsible, and they are self-replicating units of transmission. So that also points to the, how culture is evolving because of memes. And that means there is some impact which is embedded in the meaning of the word itself. That is all I would like to comment for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we have the other speakers before we have questions and our
Amit Masi. Sir, please add.
Yeah. So basically the result and finding parts, I just want to emphasize more on that. Like the first, I have conducted the content analysis of the newspapers for 15 days, starting from 16th April 2019 to 30th April 2019, as votes were casted on 6th of May in Lucknow. The newspaper was collected. Apart from magazine part, I have analyzed all headlines and specifically the column space given to the stories and the color photo space given to the stories. So an approach of the headline, like the approach was positive, negative, or neutral in the three category. So with different parties, like for example, BJP, what percentage of the approach the stories was positive, negative, and neutral. Similarly with Congress, INC, and regional parties like SP and BSP clubbed together. Coming to the survey part, I have conducted the survey in the month of March in Lucknow across all the strata, cross-sectional data in terms of you can say gender, you can say education qualification, financial status, religion, caste, because this plays a very important role, specifically this part of the country. Okay, so this was considered that cross-sectional data should be there. 120 respondents were taken in the consideration of the survey. Questionnaire was prepared. It was divided into three parts. The first was demographic. Number two was the public opinion regarding the upcoming elections. And the third section was covering about the report card, actually the report card of Narendra Modi's previous government, which came in the year 2014. So, and then the data was analyzed because as I told, this data particularly extracted from my PhD research, PhD data collection. So I have collected data from Varanasi also, Meerut also, and Jhansi. But for this particular research paper, I have considered Lucknow, as my PhD topic is Uttar Pradesh. So this data was like extracted from there, and then I have analyzed. We can clearly see that Lucknow, as per the tradition, that it is going with BJP. Like I have said, since 1991. It was primarily a BJP seat. Like Atal Bihari Vajpayee won 5 times, former Prime Minister of the country, and then we can see Rajnath came, and so Lucknow was inclined towards BJP, and people in Lucknow majorly were chanting for Namo, that is Narendra Modi. They want Narendra Modi as a Prime Minister without any fight given to him. Coming to the last part, which was the report card. Report card clearly says that more than 68% of the respondent giving more than 7 marks on different parameters, giving more than 7 marks out of 10 to Narendra Modi government, which still says that, which still advocates the popularity of his government and BJP before 2019 elections. And only 20% respondent rated him below 5. So this shows, before the election, this clearly shows where the opinion and where the wind is going. And similarly, the exact result, I was not shocked, because similarly the exact result was converted or translated when the elections result came out. Whether you talk about Lucknow or in context of Uttar Pradesh, the result was exactly same, which I got in my study. So I can clearly establish a relationship, but as I said, there are other factors also who affect public opinion. I consider those factors as limitation in my study. Maybe we can replicate or extend the study to reach to the exact conclusion. I have replicated the similar study with my student Saad Ali Khan. Somehow he is not able to present his paper as he lost his grandmother yesterday. He has replicated the same study before Delhi Legislative Assembly elections this year in February. He conducted everything in the same tool and everything. So we are trying for different constituencies, and then we will club all studies, and then we'll see where we can reach. Because these studies are very, I will say, very contemporary, because a lot of research organizations, agencies, political and non-political, are involved in this kind of research. We have IPAC, Prashant Kishore's company, who's also working towards this particular cause. And there are other political organizations, non-political organizations, research organizations, they are doing it. So this is my interest area and I'm doing it. Need your people guidance. Maybe I can further this study in other constituencies too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Amit Masi. We'll move on to our last presenter to add, Mr. Mohammad Hussain Kadri. Amit sir, is he going to? Unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, Mohammad Hussain actually is in a containment zone. So his network is causing some problem in Jaunpur. So might be his network, there's an issue with his network. So we can move forward.
Okay.
This is called Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit, if he is there.
Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit? If you're available, please add.
Dr. Pushpendu, can you hear?
He is unmuted.
No, I unmuted him, but like he's not starting his video. Dr. Pushpendu. Dr. Pushpendu, can you hear?
It's okay. I think he'll join.
I think, yeah.
So, Deepika, can we go on with the audience questions before, we have the chair observation?
Sir, we have Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit now, can we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there, sir. Yeah.
So please add something to your presentation. We have a couple of minutes for you.
If you want to add more, you have 2 or 3 minutes more to add to your presentation.
Okay, now the presentation that I gave was actually drawing our attention towards the inhuman activities which are happening at Balochistan, at Pakistan, and the role of digital media today, because of which we are able to understand, we are able to learn, and we are able to know the basic facts that we are seeing. So it is definitely a very big issue, what I feel, and that is the reason that brought our attention towards this sort of, an analysis or a research which makes us or helps us to understand that this sort of inhuman activities should not take place when globally we all are marching towards huge digitalization, or we say digitization, or we are talking about development of cultures. Then in this case, this should not happen. Now there are minorities that we are having in terms of Hindus, Muslims, Sindhis. They all are getting huge amount of trouble. Chinese people are coming and they are marrying these girls, and then they are carrying them to those places, and then after that they all are sold at different rates. If you see those videos, if you see those literature, then definitely it is giving it will give the goosebumps that we could see. It is really a very critical situation that the entire this Pakistan is facing. And in this situation, I think globally we all must should take a call now, and as India is the first nation of human trafficking, China is the second, and Pakistan ranks third globally in case of human trafficking, which is nothing again less than the sex trafficking. So this sort of slavery has to be taken care, and we all must be making sure that we all are protecting the the modesty of women, and that is one thing. And I, during this entire research, when I thought keeping women friends in mind, that definitely it would be really a big challenge for them to survive in those areas. All young girls, ladies, they are put in lot of torture, mental torture asylum. Along with that, many suicide cases are also occurring because of these issues. We are having a lot of problem related to the economic development, and these people, the population is not very huge in number, but challenges and the problem is a very big thing that we.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Sir, shall...
Deepika, can we have the audience questions, and then we'll, go for our observations?
Okay, sir. So first question from Dr. Pushpendu Rakshit is from Dr. Bhasake. Concern to political communication. What is the public opinion about the election and violations by media or political people of Balochistan and what you learned through research?
Yeah. Now the feelings or the liberty, the human rights, they are suppressed during this situation. Many people are unaware of the facts that they are not literate in order to, as a literacy rate, which I said almost is less than as low as 41%, and people are not literate. So there are forcefully, they are made to select a particular political party. And during the elections, there are lots of inhuman activities which also do take place. And definitely when we look into these matters, the literatures or the real videos, what people do say, it is anyway not a place I would not say safe for anyone to be being there. So there are lots of challenges all are facing, and politically it is all carried out by specific powers. So it is rather than only the Pakistan government, there are also supportive nearby governments who are also playing a crucial role into the same frame. So this is what a scenario that is presented at time.
Okay. Dr. Rakshit, one more question is there.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate on the role of media in covering human rights violations in Pakistan as your topic suggests?
Yeah, so there are many literatures and many researchers who have been periodically working on this, which I just tried to show on my literature, which is very limited, but there are, I have put it on the research paper, the further things are there. Now it is because of the media, the digital media, or we say the social media, we all are coming across globally. Anything, as we could see that Dr. Uma Shankar sir said at the beginning that today at any corner of the world, if anything is happening, it is getting posted or it is becoming a viral throughout the world. So this is what the role of media, definitely media had played a very important role, and because of which we could see the videos, we could see the photos, and they are all from authentic sources. And there had been many researchers globally who have propounded different theories, and they have also tried to understand the situation. But at last, we all belong to a different government, or we belong to different country. We can only understand and analyze the Pakistan or the Balochistan or Sindh, nearby provinces, the major provinces. They have to take a call on this. And definitely the media had a very important role, and the Pakistani media, when I say, they are all quite a bit limited in terms of providing the information, and they are not exposing the real facts and figures. And whereas we could see, because there are detention, there are custodial deaths, there are disappearance of people, and if suddenly somebody by chance reaches there without the proper understanding, then they are all declared as a terrorist. So there are or spying agents. So there are many issues which are happening, and because of media, it is reaching door to door through print media, digital media, or through social media. We all are able to understand to this scenario, and multiple studies are presented, and even we could see the videos presented on same. So the critical situation is explained in a very better way.
Right. Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, Dr. Mohammad Nazrul Islam, would you like to take over, or shall I move on to other questions and then?
Can I intervene here? Hrithik, this another presentation is happening, or what? I mean, why this screen sharing is happening?
Sir, no, basically we had lost his signal. So there is no presentation on screen.
So somebody else was sharing this screen.
Yeah, that is right. Okay, so all these presentations are finished now then?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Pandey, you can put your questions or summarize whatever you feel like.
Okay. So shall we go to the screen, or do we have more? Shall we ask the questions that the people have already asked, or shall?
From Rakshit sir, Dr. Rakshit, there are no more questions. There are questions for other presenters.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot, Amrisha. Thanks a lot, Uma Shankar sir. Thanks a lot, Deepika ma'am. Thanks a lot. Even Nazrul sir. Thanks a lot.
So,
Deepika, ask the other questions. No, you will, Dr. Pandey, you will finish one by one, or you will take other questions also?
I think the audience questions will be over, and then we will, come back.
Okay. So, Deepika, take other questions as well.
Thank you. Sir, the next question is from Ms. Sukriti Arora. First is, do you think the age of 18 to 29, they have political perceptions from the internet, or we can develop it somehow?
See, I believe that at the age of 18 to 29, yes, there are certain political perceptions existing, because no matter what, from childhood, we start sitting with our parents while they're watching news, or we are exposed to some kind of content at least. So there is perception, but it is not as strong as maybe that of our parents who have been exposed to those facts for a very long time, or who have been casting their votes for a very long time. So through internet, political perceptions can be developed. Yes, if there are none existing, they can be developed, and even the existing ones can be impacted. That is what I believe from my research.
Okay. The next question is from Ms. Akriti Taneja. She asks you to bring to light political memes in the context of political perceptions, which we often use for entertainment. It is relevant topic. It's a kind of a comment. So no more questions from Ms. Sukriti Arora.
There was one from Miss Manaswini, Dr.
Yes,
Manaswini
yes, yes,
Yogi.
Dr. Yogi. Yeah. So she asked,
yes.
"This is what do you think is the reason that an individual's political perception changes like this?"
Dr. Yogi, I believe that the perceptions as of now, my research has been limited to finding whether perception changes or not. I am yet to figure out more on what are the factors that are actually affecting these changes. However, I would say from the preliminary searches that the sheer volume of memes that we come across on internet, they are actually responsible for gradually causing a shift in opinions, or even strengthening of certain perceptions. So, of course, more research would be required to figure out the factors that are affecting. One of them is the sheer volume of memes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Arora. The next question is from the next presenter, Mr. Amit Masi. Ms. Akriti Taneja asks, in your opinion, does a newspaper's ideology impact its coverage in political issues as well?
Can you repeat your question?
However, in your opinion, does a newspaper's ideology impact its coverage on political issues as well?
I believe yes, up to a certain extent, I will say yes, it impacts. But there are other factors also which needs to be considered, maybe in future studies.
Okay. No more questions, sir, for now. Not that I can.
There is one question I can see.
From, yeah.
Yeah, I think,
please, if you can see, you can answer that. Please.
Yeah. There is one question regarding how you can guide other political parties with your research. So I would like to answer this particular question. Yes, as I said, these studies are very contemporary and relevant and practical also, which can be taken by these political parties. Yes, if they consider this study and find this particular study useful for them, they can use this particular study and get the opinion from the people. But they have to be realistic, because most of the time these parties, what they are doing biased studies, which are biased in their results. So they need to be very honest and ethical in their studies.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, there's one more question for Pushpendu Rakshit, sir, from Riddhi Bhargava. Can you mention some case studies that justify your research paper? So please unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Yeah. Nice question, ma'am. So already in the research paper, it has been mentioned. So where we have given many literature reviews, and we have also given the cases. And I would just like to quote one case as it has come, a question has come. So by 2020, the Baluch leader, Mehran Mari, calling Pakistan army coward, said this army has to be held accountable for number of deaths that they have, the reason of the death in custodial that has taken place. Even by 2019, we are having the Baluch activist Umar Malik, he also said that Islamic the Balochistan situations are not good, and Pakistan authority must be taking proper care about this sort of activities which are happening. Even in Parliament magazine 2015, this was also mentioned, and along with that we could see there had been multiple cases, of course, which are there. Now most of the time generally we see the victims, their names are not directly quoted, so directly getting name of somebody is difficult. But yes, there are, like we have Journal Ahmad Rashid writing 2014 that estimates a number of disappearing cases in Balochistan, and the numbers are in thousands. So around 5,228 people were disappearing suddenly by 2017 without any reason. That means if there is a disappearance that is taking place, it is all because of some sort of trafficking which is going on either globally. So people are either taken from Nepal, India, and then from other nearby SAARC nations, and then they are trafficked to China. So it is just before someday also, I think before Corona, I think by the month of Jan or Feb, during I was preparing this research paper, we have the DNA analysis on ZTV there also, and the show was there where we could see this sort of issues were taking place, and in which we had the speaker, the orator also putting the problems and said that this is what is happening, and because of Chinese people coming, and because China is not into hardcore like they are communists, and when they come here they convert them into the Islamic, and after that they are again taking these ladies. They may be from any religion, they are Sindhis, Punjabis, Hindus, which are minority. If these girls are not allowed to celebrate, or this population is not allowed to celebrate even Diwali and Dashera or Hindu rituals, so demolishing of the temples and other rituals are there, and then these girls are taken to those places, and with the name of giving them a trust or marriage and all, then these Chinese people take them there, and then they are used for different purpose, and they are trafficked even to Africa and even to multiple different parts of US and UK. So that is one big problem that we are seeing, and there are many quotes which have been given, or many such studies which have been given by at different times. Even we are having one study that is given by 2018 by Mona Alam, that Balochistan situation is getting complex day by day, and there had been limits of human right violation that we could see. So violation of human right is always had been a big problem. Not only now, it can be seen from over the decades that we are getting through different studies. 70 to 90% of women, they face a severe problem there. And if you listen to the videos, if you see, they are nothing less than a case. If somebody is crying, howling, and sharing this story, holding a photo of a Chinese person that this person married me, and after that he left. There was a use of the person, and then it was left, and then there are different economic or other boundaries or pressures that are created slowly. So this is what I would say, that these are the certain things that I could present here, and there are multiple such which we can find. Okay, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Now the chair and the co-chair are requested to conduct the Q&A round.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the presentations, everybody. And all four of you worked really very hard for your papers, and congratulations everybody, because it's not very easy, along with all your other routine activities and, during the COVID situation and all, to come out with a research paper. And it's tough, to do real research and come out with findings and all that. There are a few general points that I would like to make, before we carry on with maybe more observations. Now, there are 3 or 4 very important things in most of the papers that we have discussed today, and one is about the difference between correlation and causation. A lot of the times, what we are finding out maybe from our data, probably it's correlation. It's probably one thing is happening and another thing is happening at the same time. If we try and extrapolate it into causation, then we are into a very different territory. And that is where, we have to emphasize on a lot of factors that, how are the other variables absent from this kind of a, conclusion or an inference that this led to that. If we come to a conjecture like this led to that, then we are into a very different territory. And that is what we have to be very careful about. Because, communication has so many of these different aspects, and there are so many players around that, they have things to suggest, so on and so forth. Of course, there are problems with a survey research, and one major problem is with self-reporting. This is about the second and the third and the fourth presentation, and that again is a very important issue that has to be dealt with in many situations. Like, for example, we have understood, we know about the concept of triangulation and these things. When I say that I like this or I do not like that, if we just take it as something which is the honest opinion, that's one way of it. But we must also have ways of trying to verify these contentions as well. And that's a very important area of research, because lot of the times these self-reports might not be measuring what we intend to measure. And there are many other, as I said, intervening factors which lead us to maybe wrong conclusion at times. So that's very important, how we define these scales or how we define the questionnaires. So there are a lot of conceptual elements that we have to be careful about. And another area is about a proper theoretical background to whatever we are suggesting, because if we do not place it in the wider stream of knowledge, or if we do not place it in terms of wider conversations on the same issue, then probably our research might not have the same kind of an impact that we intended to be. And that is something that we advise all researchers, all of your quite senior researchers, I'm sure you know that. Unless we get to publish these papers and unless we get people to cite our work, then this work will not be very useful. Probably we might get API points, probably we might be very happy, and I'm really happy that Ambrish has given this platform, and this is wonderful. And probably the only thing missing from a real conference is maybe a digital coffee. Otherwise everything is just like a real conference, and we have some wonderful people among the participants. One of them, Dr. Yogi, is there, and she's such a senior teacher, and so nice to see her participate with the questions and with her observations and all. And that is what conferences are about. These are about the conversations. But then these questions of validity and reliability are very, very important. When I am asking a particular question, is that a valid question, and the tool that I'm adopting, whether that provides me with the real with the right answers. Because the problem with social science research is that there is always a question of replicability. If this is just a standalone observation or a standalone opinion, then probably we are not adding to the stream of knowledge that exists, and our job is to to add to that. We learn from what our further previous generations have done, and we add to that for our next stream of researches as well. So that's very important. For example, if I say that 34% people are attracted to this thing, that's a very very important statement to make, because we have to understand the distinction between suggesting that in my data 34% of the people are attracted. I cannot theorize on the basis of my data. My data is just 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, or whatever. There has to be a number of studies on that, and that's where it comes out. And these are all very complex things. When we ask questions, the way people answer, unless we have the reverse ordering and many such things, and that's why we have existing scales. So our job should be to add to that knowledge by making it a reliable kind of research design, that in other contexts also we must be able to find out the similar results or whatever. Because unless my hypothesis is not falsifiable, it is not scientific. If I say, for example, say that there are no peacocks in our garden here, it is falsifiable if I only see one peacock here. It is falsifiable. I mean, if it is not falsifiable, it is not scientific. So we must understand the limitations in which we are working. And that's where it's important to take our research to the next level, because when we have such wonderful platform and we have such wonderful resources now, and this is really nice that even in this situation we are having proper statistical tools, so on and so forth. But we have to take it to the next statistical inference level. the descriptive part is really very good, but for us it's important that we take it to the inferential part, or maybe even suggest models that can be replicated. Because if we are just not providing the updated context, if we are not doing our methods in a way in which recent communication research has evolved to, then we will not be able to make the same impact that otherwise we could. For example, in the first study, there are a lot of observations about human rights violations. These are we are chronicling that, but of course, are we looking at a trend? Are we looking at some kind of political communication strategy on behalf of the state there, or on behalf of the activists involved there? So these are the things that we have to look to, because if you're just chronicling the facts, then these facts exist. We have to make sense of that, and that's very, very important. About the second part, political memes are really very important, a very important area of study, and there are a lot of I know of Dr. Kulkarni in Mumbai. I think you have kind of referred to her work as well, and that's really nice. But when we talk of content analysis, we have to realize in terms of maybe even the framing theory, or maybe in terms of the existing. The content analysis was in the third work, but in the second work, if I say that people 35% of 39% of people are impacted by memes, then we will be seeing a lot more memes than we actually do. So that again is one area, because if if 39% of people are impacted, that's a very, because what leads to public opinion, it's a very complex question. It is not a straightforward like somebody watches this and they change. It doesn't happen like that. There are complex perceptions. There are complex processes involved here, and we have to keep track of all that. So and in third study, basically, when we are talking about the content analysis, it should not just be about positive, negative, neutral, or things like that. Content analysis, we have a very rich tradition of content analysis methods. Starting from deductive methods to inductive methods and all that. So unless we take it to that particular level, because otherwise there are lots of artificial machine learning techniques available. It's all available. The the natural language processing techniques available. I take 18,000 tweets, and I can tell them, and they know that if this word is there, then it is positive, this is negative, and this is neutral. So if we are just doing at that level, then probably our research is not required. These tools already exist. Our research has to go deep into maybe the unit of analysis could be the story itself, and then again the same story, if it is I say that this is a story involving BJP, but at the same time they are maybe talking about other parties there as well. So what is my coding framework? Whether I have a proper coding framework there, so that if somebody else does the same coding, he also gets the same result. Probably we do coding ourselves, but if somebody else were doing it, will it be equally reliable? I'm sure we've heard about the terms of intercoder reliability and so on and so forth. But somebody says that this party is good, and that person actually goes out to vote and does not vote, is probably not true, because 74% of people did not vote for that particular party. So I'm not sure whether the party in question won 74% in that constituency. Even 74% vote is unthinkable in democracy like ours. Even in 1984, for example, when Rajiv Gandhi won a major landslide, even then the vote percentage was a little above 50%. So 74% we can't say that 70 this was reflected. The number of seats is a different thing, and that is where a lot of political opinion polling goes wrong. In trying to relate the voting percentage with the number of seats, and that's a very, very complex exercise. The number of seats may not actually be to that. But again, I'm just telling this because all of you are such good researchers that you deserve to take it to the next level, maybe to Scopus Index journal, and people cite your work, so that we have this groundwork. So again, congratulations on the wonderful work, and I'm sure you'll make it even more relevant than what you've done.
Thank you, Dr. Umashankar Pandey. I request Dr. Mohammad Nazrul Islam to say a few words.
Thank you. There is a huge discussion. I think the Chair Pandey sir, he has already discussed everything very clearly. And now I already, I think there are only 2 or 3 things I can add here. And first of all, the role of media in showcasing rising voice against the deprivation of rudimentary human rights in Pakistan. The research was conducted in Pakistan context, and this is a discussion that can be, I think this is regarding the digital media, especially the social media, he added here as a research content. So I think there is a huge discussion in our social media, and already Pandey sir included in his discussion that these types of social media, if you analyze, you need to add the artificial intelligence to analyze those research content in those arena. So this is a very predictable, especially for the developing world, where the human rights, especially in Pakistan and in the South Asian countries, this is violated everywhere. But in our mainstream media, it doesn't depict in that the same as they are happening. But in our social media, we think that it was discussed very elaborately, and everywhere we found so many data. But the description, if it is in qualitative ways, it is also possible. But I think there is a discussion that will be more specific if we can identify it quantitatively. But I think this is not very bad work. I request the role of media. If you want to analyze the role of media, you need to identify how can you analyze it, and especially some of the variables you can set here, and it will be more quantifiable. But in a qualitative research, you need to analyze it in a different way. So I think this is a very good research, especially for the South Asian countries. And in the second types, Sukriti Aura already discussed about the political perception and memes. And the third research, newspaper coverage and public opinion. And the fourth research, public opinion in the national election. So there is 2 different idea they added in this three new research. I think if we identify the 2 different angles in a same research, then we need to identify the association between them. Otherwise, we cannot define the research title in our research description. So at first, I want to tell that newspaper coverage and public opinion. So how it is associated with each other, and statistically we can define it. Otherwise, if we just a descriptive way, we can if we discuss it, the description will be depict some surface or superficial knowledge about it. But if we want to go to the depth of that knowledge, we want to identify the association between them. So I think in this 3 research, we can associate, we can some question or something to identify the association between them. And last for my speech, I want to add that a study to find out public opinion. So there is some redundancy of the title here, a study to find out. This is not necessary to include in a study, because we know that the title was to identify something, to analyze something, to study something. So if we can omit this types of word from research topic, then the title will be more furnished. So I think this is all, and I especially thanks to the organizer that there is a huge discussion and there is a participant which is not possible physically attend in a conference, but we can describe, we can question, we can ask, and we can also present ourselves here in a very simple way, and also there is a lack of less cost. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I now request Dr. Saxena and Dr. Bala for their remarks, closing remarks.
No need of making any remarks now because the chairperson and the co-chairperson have already made the concluding remarks on the session. The only thing that I can say is to thank you to the chair, to the co-chair, all paper presenters, all the participants in this session, because they are the most important people. The participation, I mean, since this is the 8th day, and almost we are having sessions every day from 6 hours to 8 hours. Sometimes it has increased. Normally, on an average, these are the 6 hours, but someday it increased to 8 hours. But it's still, there are people who have patience, who take interest in the deliberations, who participate, who remain there, who ask the questions, and some very senior people have been there throughout, who have not missed a single day, like Dr. Manasni Yogi has always been there and has been participatory. Similarly, Mr. R.K. Singh, who has retired as chief engineer from Doordarshan, he is always there and taking part and asking questions. So I'm really obliged to all such people because they give credibility to whatever we are doing. They give a moral boosting to the presenters, and they contribute towards the quality of discussion which is happening. So I owe to all these people, with the help of whom we are pulling on this conference. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Bala ma'am, do you want to add?
Thanks to Uma Shankar sir and Nazrul Islam sir. Thank you all.
So at Pramod sir, are you there? Mr. Pramod Pandey?
I think we should wind up the session because
Yes, sir.
Close.
So yeah, I wanted to inform there is a valedictory session on June 30th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Kindly please attend this. We have all the distinguished guests from the academia and industry, and there's a cultural program also on that day. So you all are requested to be there. Thank you so much.
And the next session,
next session will start
at 3.
At 3 to 5.
Yeah, next session will start at 3 o'clock.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.